For a long time, people believed the world changed slowly, like sand drifting across a desert. But history does not change slowly. It breaks. It snaps. And when it snaps, everything is never the same again. And so our story begins at the moment the world nearly ended. It was year 1815, on a warm morning that felt strangely quiet. Farmers stood in their fields. Children chased each other along dusty roads. Sailors prepared their ships on calm blue waters. No one knew they had only minutes before the sky itself would turn black. On a quiet island in Southeast Asia, the ground began to shake. Birds shot into the air. Dogs howled. The sea pulled back like a beast inhaling. And then the world exploded. A volcano named Tambora, silent for centuries, erupted with force so violent that sailors thousands of miles away thought it was cannon fire. Entire villages disappeared under waves of burning ash. Clouds rose higher than storms. The sun vanished behind a curtain of darkness. But the real shock came 1 year later. Across Europe and North America, snow fell in June. Crops failed. Rivers froze. Families starved. People painted sunsets that glowed red like fire because the ash in the sky changed the colors of the world. It became known as the year without a summer. And in that cold, hungry year, the world discovered something frightening. Human civilization is fragile, more fragile than anyone ever imagined. But how did humanity build something so great, yet so easy to break? That answer begins thousands of years earlier, long before cities, kings, or even writing. Back to the beginning, when the world was young, tens of thousands of years ago. The planet looked nothing like it does now. There were no borders, no nations, no history books, only wild forests, empty deserts, deep oceans, and long trails carved by migrating humans searching for food. People moved in small groups, carrying only what they needed. They gathered berries, hunted animals, and made fires that flickered inside cold, dark caves. Nights were long. Winters were cruel. But even then, humans had something no other creature had: the need to understand. A child would draw the shape of a deer on a cave wall. A hunter would mark the rocks with symbols showing where herds moved. Mothers told stories around fires, so their children would remember what the stars meant, when the rains would come, and which rivers were safe to drink from. These were humanity's first libraries, made of memory, not paper. And slowly, people realized something powerful. Alone we survive. Together we build. Families became groups. Groups became tribes. Tribes became the first villages. And one day, someone did something no one had ever done before. They planted a seed, the first great turning point. No one knows who planted the first crop or where. But historians believe it happened in several places at different times: Egypt, China, the Middle East, South America. Small experiments became bigger ones. Seeds turned to fields. Fields turned to harvests. Harvests turned into something new: civilization. People no longer had to move. They could stay in one place long enough to build homes, shape tools, and bury their dead in the same soil where they planted their future. Villages grew beside rivers where the land was rich. Children who once roamed wild now learned to farm. Life became more predictable, but also more complex. Because when food stays in one place, people do too. And where people gather, so does power. Cities rise from the earth. The first cities were nothing like the ones we know today. They were small, crowded, and noisy, made of mud, stone, and wood. But they held something magical: the idea that people could accomplish more together than alone. In Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, humans built Uruk, one of the first great cities. It had temples, markets, and walls so tall they could be seen from miles away. Rulers claimed they spoke for the gods. Farmers delivered grain. Traders moved their goods across dusty roads. And in a quiet room lit by oil lamps, someone pressed symbols into wet clay. The world's first writing was born. Words became memory. Memory became history. And history became power. From Egypt's Nile Valley to China's Yellow River, civilizations rose like stars in the night, each one trying to shape the world in its own image. But every rise has a cost. The first collapse. Thousands of years passed. Cities grew. Roads expanded. Kings built armies. Scientists created calendars. Builders raised pyramids and temples so tall they touched the sky. And then, suddenly, almost all of it fell apart. Around 1200 BCE, a mysterious disaster struck the ancient world. Entire civilizations in the Mediterranean, Mycenae, the Hittites, major cities across the Near East, were destroyed one after another. Why? Historians still argue. Some say drought. Some say famine. Some say conflict. Some say all three. But whatever the reason, people fled cities they had lived in for centuries. Trade routes collapsed. Knowledge was lost. Writing disappeared in some places for hundreds of years. The world entered a dark age. And yet, humanity rose again. It always does. The rebuilding. New cultures emerged from the ruins. Greece, Persia, Rome, China's dynasties, civilizations across Africa, the Americas, and Asia. Each added something important. Greece shaped philosophy and reason. Persia built systems of tolerance and law. Rome engineered roads, cities, and governments. China advanced writing, inventions, and central rule. Great African kingdoms like Kush, Aksum, and Mali rose with trade, learning, and cultural power. Civilizations in the Americas built cities with astronomy, mathematics, and architecture far ahead of their time. Humanity grew wiser, but it also grew more ambitious. Empires rose like giants and fell just as fast, sometimes through war, sometimes through disease, sometimes through greed, mistakes, or simple bad luck. History moved like a giant wheel, steady, unstoppable, always turning. And each turn brought the world closer to the moment where this chapter began. The morning the sky turned black, returning to the peak moment. Now we return to the year 1815, the moment we started with. Tambara's eruption did not destroy civilization, but it revealed something terrifying. For all our knowledge, for all our inventions, for all our history, nature could still shake the world in an instant. Families wrote desperate letters about failing crops. Farmers prayed for sunlight that never came. Governments struggled to help starving towns. Some believed the world was ending. Others thought they had angered the gods. But scientists began asking a new question. What if disasters like this shaped history before we could write about them? The droughts that ended ancient kingdoms. The crop failures that triggered mass migrations. The famines that pushed people to abandon great cities. The cold years that may have started wars. Suddenly, everything humans thought they knew about their past felt incomplete. And then, 1 year after Tambara's eruption, a strange discovery was made, one that forced historians to rethink everything. The cliffhanger. In a quiet village far from the great cities, a farmer digging in his field struck something hard. He brushed away the dirt and revealed stone, carved stone. But this was not ordinary carving. The symbols were older than any writing in the region, older than the village, older, some said, than many known civilizations. Archaeologists soon gathered. They cleared more soil, more stone, more symbols. And then they uncovered something impossible. A buried doorway, leading deeper underground, and carved into the lintel, a message no one could translate. The excavation leader stepped back, stunned, because the carvings showed people fleeing from a dark sky, a sky filled with ash, just like Tambara. And the moment they tried to open the stone door, the ground beneath them trembled, as if something long buried was waiting. To be continued in part 2. To enjoy more of the Pastmyst, the story of the past. Enjoy and have fun.